There was once a car called Gumdrop. He was very old, and his proper name was Austin Clifton Heavy 12-4. He belonged to Mr. Oldcastle, who kept him properly oiled and shiny. Mr. Oldcastle went to live with his daughter in the town, but she had no space for Gumdrop. "I shall have to sell him," Mr. Oldcastle said sadly. "However, I'll take off the brass horn to keep." So Gumdrop was sold to Mr. Pluggett's garage. "An old crock like this isn't much use," said Mr. Pluggett, "but someone might buy his instruments." So he took them out and sold them separately. Gumdrop was left out in the yard. Nobody wanted to buy him. One day 2 burglars ran into the yard, running away from the police. "This old crock will do," said one. "No one will miss it." So they started the engine, jumped in, and were off down the road. Now an Austin Clifton Heavy 12-4 is difficult to drive. Gumdrop lurched from side to side, the brakes and gears making dreadful noises. Then, in the middle of the road, they saw a policeman. "I can't stop," said the driver. With a sharp squeal, a big crunch, a loud bang, a gurgling hiss and a dull clang, Gumdrop went straight into the window of Mr. Moppet's greengrocer's shop. Crash! The policeman walked up and arrested the 2 burglars. Gumdrop was towed away, and as Mr. Moppet tidied up the shop, he was surprised to find 2 brass headlamps. "I'll hang them up outside the shop," he said, and that's what he did. The police sergeant was a kind man. He knew a good vintage car when he saw one. "But we can't keep you here," he said. "The superintendent doesn't like old cars. However, we would like to take out the engine and battery to drive our cement mixer." And that was exactly what they did. Poor Gumdrop. Mr. Oldcastle had kept his brass horn, he'd lost his instruments at Pluggett's, his headlamps at Moppet's, and now his engine and battery had been taken out. That afternoon, a lorry came and towed him out to a field full of scrap metal of all sorts. For weeks, Gumdrop stood amongst the scrap metal. One day, Mr. Zachariah Rosa, a gypsy, saw Gumdrop in the field. "Just what I want to tow behind my caravan with all my extra bits in," he said. So he bought Gumdrop for a few pounds, mended his tyres, and towed him away. Next day, a motorcycle frightened Cherry, Mr. Rosa's horse, who bolted. The caravan fell into a ditch, breaking its wheels. The Rosa family wondered what to do. "We'll take off Gumdrop's wheels and use them," said Mr. Rosa. Then Gumdrop, without wheels, was left alone in a field. But not for long. Mr. Alfred Blops, a tramp, cleaned up the seats and slept in Gumdrop at night. One morning, as Mr. Blops was getting up, a man appeared. "I'm a vintage car enthusiast, and I have been looking for such a car to rebuild for next year's vintage car competition. My name is Bill McCarran. Would you sell your car to me?" Mr. Blops accepted the money, although he'd lost his home, which he'd kept so clean. So Bill collected the car in a lorry and took him home. He straightened the dents, polished the sides, and his wife mended the hood. After weeks of work, Gumdrop stood shining good as new. But he had no wheels, no engine, no battery, no lamps, no instruments, and no horn. "I can't find these things anywhere," said Bill. "They don't make them anymore." While searching one day, he saw the 2 brass lamps outside the greengrocer's. When Mr. Moppet heard that Gumdrop was being rebuilt, he quickly agreed to sell them. Bill went to Mr. Pluggett's for some wire, and he told him about the instruments he'd got, so Gumdrop got them back too. The police sergeant had no more need for the engine and battery, so they were returned, and he told Bill about the scrap merchant. Mr. Brett, the scrap merchant, told him that Mr. Rosa had the wheels. He'd got a new caravan, and so Gumdrop got his wheels back. And so Gumdrop, fully restored, was driven to take part in the vintage car competition. There were many fine cars there when they arrived. The judging began, and 2 men looked all over Gumdrop, made notes, and then went on to the next car. Later in the day came an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, the first prize goes to Mr. Bill McCarran." The people cheered Gumdrop, and the prize was given to them by none other than Mr. Oldcastle, the president of the club. Not only did he give Bill the cup, he also gave him the shiny brass horn he'd taken off Gumdrop all that time ago.